There is a general understanding that only 1 out of 3,000 explorations turn into a producing mine. And the company I'm analyzing today has a high potential to be the one. So instead of just analyzing another stock, I decided to go one significant step further. I took a closer look at this specific silver miner, and what I found was interesting enough that I decided to go directly to the source and speak with the CEO. And what he said changed how I look at this company. And this is also the first episode of a new series where I combine technical analysis with direct insights from management to identify high upside opportunities early. And if you don't want to miss the next episode, you should already hit the subscribe button. So let's break it down. Before we now get into the interview with the CEO, we need to take a quick look at the chart because this is where we can narrow down our entry zones more clearly. And just a quick disclaimer, this is not a sponsored or paid video, and at the end of the video I will reveal if I will buy, if I stay sidelined, or if I am already invested. So the company I'm analyzing today is Pacifica Silver, and their CEO is Todd Anthony. Right now, Pacifica Silver is consolidating right underneath resistance. And what stands out to me here is the support at 1 Canadian dollar. So this bigger black line right here is a really strong support zone. And also the resistance in between 1.4 to 1.5 Canadian dollars, which is this gray zone right here. In my opinion, this supported 1 Canadian dollar can hold if there won't be any more dilution of shares. And a breakout of this current consolidation can happen if we see further high grade exploration. And a breakout way higher than 10x will most likely happen if the mine gets developed. The logic question a good investor should ask himself after hearing what I just said is, does the underlying story actually support this setup or not? And that's exactly what I wanted to find out. And what makes this even more interesting, I actually confronted the CEO with the chart of his own company and got his real-time reaction. That's something you almost never see, and from an investor perspective, it was very revealing. Now, when we talk about a potential 10x, this obviously depends on execution, real results, and resource growth. Basically all the things I was mentioning before. So in the following interview, I'll be addressing these exact points directly with the CEO and try to get all those questions answered. And for context, the questions weren't provided in advance, so everything you're about to hear is completely unscripted. Hi Todd, great to have you on. Thanks for taking the time joining our channel today.
Well, thanks for having us on, Patricia, and pleasure to meet you and being on your channel here.
Let's start right into the first question because I want to keep this focused and practical for investors. And to start, can you give us a 60-second elevator pitch on Pacifica Silver and what sets the Claudia project apart in the current high silver price environment?
Sure. Pacifica Silver owns the Claudia project, which we acquired last year. This project is in the state of Durango, Mexico. It's a high-grade near surface, at surface project. We've mapped over the history of this project goes back many, many decades. But the first time it's ever been in a public vehicle by itself. So it comes from the same pedigree as the Vizsla project. It was called Panuco. It was owned by the same private group back in the day. My partner acquired this project about 5 years ago, did some drilling on it, had some really good success, pretty much half gold, half silver. And we've mapped over 30 kilometers of structure on the project. So it's 9 kilometers long by 2.5 kilometers wide, which for a junior is very rare to see such a large project in a junior company. We're fully funded. We raised just recently $23 million. We're basically funded for the next 2.5, 3 years. We're going to be drilling over 100,000 meters of drilling in those 2 years. So we'll have lots of news flow going forward and hopefully some new discoveries to announce to the market.
Yeah, this sounds really great and well said. So going on to the next question, what I as a silver miners investor am wondering right now is that in previous interviews, as you just said, you noted that the $23 million financing from January would fund those 100,000 meters at around $150 per meter, assaying included. And as you are currently in phase two with 3 rigs, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, and with over 15 million likely still in the treasury after those phase 2 drillings, why not ramp up to 5 or 6 rigs to test it 30,000 kilometers vein system faster? Also, one more important thing at the current state of the world economic, with oil prices remaining elevated in 2026, how much pressure is that putting on your $150 per meter cost target?
Sure. Well, your first question relating to getting more rigs on site, I
Mm-hmm.
agree with you 100%. I'd like to see 4, 5, 6 rigs there, but it's going to be dependent on success. We need to, the 3 rigs are going, they're doing roughly 500 meters a month combined. Um, and actually, no, it's probably closer to, sorry, 1,000 meters a month. Um, and, and we've got them focused on different parts of the project. So some parts are more brownfield, some parts more greenfield. To bring on another 2 or 3 rigs, I think we need to have some new discoveries, and we want to keep, say 1 rig at Justina, for example, one
Mm-hmm.
rig down to the south, and just prioritize those for those areas. Uh, I'm hoping to have, in the second half of this year, hopefully see some additional rigs come in. The other challenge with getting more rigs is just having enough water for the rigs. We don't, we're using a lot of underground old, water that's in some of the old workings. We've got ponds built that trap water that we use. And right now in Mexico, we're in the dry season. So
Mm-hmm.
challenge, water is a bit of a challenge right now. So the 3 rigs are kind of maxing it out. But the good news is that the rainy season is going to kick in here in the next month or two, and we'll probably have too much water when that happens. So the other question was, what was the second part of that
It was
question?
about
Sorry.
the oil prices staying
Oh,
elevated
right.
for quite some time. And how would this impact, or what kind of pressure would this put on your $150 per meter target
Yeah, well,
for
it doesn't
drilling?
really wouldn't affect us because we've locked those costs in with the contractor, so those are fixed.
Ah, okay.
I guess he could always try to renegotiate that if diesel becomes much more expensive. But for the most part, I would say it doesn't really affect us at all. It would affect us on the peso side, I guess if oil became more expensive and the peso strengthened as a result of that, it
Mm-hmm.
might affect us on the FX, but it wouldn't
Okay.
really affect that too significantly.
Okay, great to hear that. One follow-up question. So you just said that you would plan to add some more rigs if the results confirm that this would be a right decision. At what point does data saturation become an issue where you simply can't assay fast enough to justify adding more rigs?
Well, that's the other challenge is getting the information back from the assays to know where to put the rig next. And we want to be strategic and systematic about that approach because, otherwise you're just drilling in the unknown. And the good thing is we're getting assays back very quick now. We're getting it, within 21 days of the lab starting the prep work, we're getting assays back. So we have seen a dramatic improvement to the turnaround at the lab. And because it was 6 weeks and now it's down to 3 weeks. And hopefully, fingers crossed, they're saying they think they can get it down to 2 weeks. So, but yeah, no, that's the other challenge is just managing the information flow and having the target to drill after we've got some results back from the lab to continue drilling in that area. So, like I think we will probably see the rig count improve in the second half of the year. But again, it's still too early to really. We haven't gotten to that point yet where we've made a decision. Right now, we're pretty content with the three rigs, and
Mhm.
they're churning out enough core right now to keep the 23 people at site very busy.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned water, and that's my third question. It's a crucial question for investors, in my opinion, because it's really important for the conviction of long-term investors that want to see the project being developed into a mine eventually. Because Mexico's mining landscape has become more complex regarding environmental and water regulations.
Mhm.
And you are fully permitted for exploration, as far as I know. But you have mentioned that water permitting is still required for the future in one of your recent interviews. Given the current political climate in Mexico, what is the realistic timeline for securing those rights? And how does that affect your PEA timing?
It wouldn't affect the PEA timing at all. First, we'd need to come out with a resource before we even get to that
Hmm.
PE level
Yeah.
stage, which, I'm pretty confident in the next year and a half, we'll have a resource out. Um, the water situation, the good thing is we're in an aquifer in Durango. This aquifer, it's a very underutilized aquifer. So that's a great thing for us. There's not a big demand on it. So, and we've had discussions with the local government and also the state government about recharging the aquifer, doing things, basically creating a water bank, building dams to instead of having runoff, when it rains, a lot of the water runs off. But if we can build some kind of containment and let the water naturally, you know, pond up and drain back into the earth and recharge it, we're looking at some um, potential projects to do that. So we're kind of ahead of the game, I think, when it comes to water conservation, and water is obviously the most important thing. There's also some other potential being able to drill a well or two on a project or on a property nearby that we could hopefully get access to water down the road as well. But yeah.
Okay, so to conclude, you are well prepared in advance, or you are already preparing for the future in terms of water permitting and water preservation.
We're doing the hydrologic studies and
Hmm.
the planning now to
Hmm.
prepare for down the road.
All
Exactly.
right, all right.
Yeah.
So you have just mentioned the MRE, Mineral Resource Estimate, the PEA, and
Mhm.
looking at page 20 of your April 13th corporate presentation, you have clearly stated that the goal is to establish a maiden NI 43101 inferred resource, specifically at the Aguilarena shaft area.
Mhm. Mhm.
Given the continuity you've seen in the first 1.9 kilometers of strike, what is, is your internal scale you're targeting for this main resource? Are we looking at a target in the 30 to 50 million ounces of silver equivalent range, or does the Aguilarena area alone have the potential to go much larger?
Well, I think, you can ask AI these days on how many ounces are in a vein. You say, if a vein's 2 kilometers long by 300 meters deep by 5 meters wide with a certain grade, you can come out with some pretty, and you've got you can come out with a number of how many ounces are in that vein. Um, but I think for us, we're not in a rush to put out a resource. Once you put out a resource, I think the market pegs you at that number. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see 100 million ounces of silver equivalent resource, on the initial MRE. Knock on wood, the Aguilarena structure is proving to be a nice structure, and it's got some still laterally open at north to south, and it's as we're coming down to the south at Tres Reyes, and it's trending now to the southeast. The continuity is continuing. So there's who knows if this is a 3 kilometer, 4 kilometer long structure at the end of the day. To the north, it's still open to the north as it trends to up to the Lizeth area. So, you know, we don't know if we're at the front end of the elephant, the middle of the elephant, or at the back of the elephant when it comes to Aguilarena. So we're still learning that, and we're still putting the pieces together. But there was a historical resource that was
Mm-hmm.
done in the early 2000s by Christopher, a gentleman who's no longer with us. But he came out with this back of the envelope number that says, okay, if this vein is 1.6 kilometers long by 350 meters deep with these grades, he worked out to 1.5 million ounces of gold and 77 million ounces of silver. So, if we could prove that up, I think that'd be fantastic. And but again, it just takes time and takes the drilling to do it. And again, we're not in a major rush to put out a resource. As long as the drilling is going good, I think we're just going to continue to focus on letting the drill do its thing. And we do have to come out with a resource by the end of 2029 because of a prior agreement with the prior owner that would trigger a payment of a discovery gold payment. So we've got 3 years to do that. So and by then we'll have a lot of drilling. We'll probably have done already 150, maybe even 200,000 meters of drilling, assuming again everything is going successful. But there's lots of new targets we're developing today. We're hoping to drill to the north, that Lizeth area that I referred to, which is probably a good 5 kilometers north of Aguilarena that's never been drill tested. And there's some massive sheeted veins outcropping on surface up there that are just begging to be drilled. So,
Right.
anyways,
So
that's in the second half of this year, and that
mhm.
could, and getting back to your original question, validate getting more rigs at the site. That would definitely, I think, that area could justify a rig or two by itself up at Lizeth.
All right. So there's a lot of potential on exploration to do, which could actually give you even bigger resources in the coming years. All right.
Mhm.
Sounds really promising so far. Coming or looking forward to the end game, build or sell. So with your background at First Majestic, you know what a major producer looks for. Are you building Pacifica Silver to be a standalone producer with its own mill? Or is the goal to prove up to 70 million ounces of silver, 1 million ounces of gold, or even more resource and hand the keys to majors like Majestic or Pan American Silver?
Well, you can't really plan that out. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of examples of if you're successful and you
Mm-hmm.
find a nice ore body, um, the market valuates you at a premium, and it's not accretive for a major to come in and acquire you. So you're a victim of your own success, and you're forced to go down the road of, constructing it and take it into production. And then once you do that and you de-risk all of it, that's typically when M&A potential could occur, like we've seen it with, Silvercrest and MAG and Gatos. You had to get those projects into production. And Vizsla could be the same situation, although that's a different problem that's happening down there now. But
Mm.
eventually, I think they could be a victim. They'd have to build it themselves, but we'll see. The future hasn't been told yet. So at the end of the day, it's a good question, but I can't really, the thinking here is we definitely would like to get into production one day. The exploration side of the business is the fun part where you can see the 10, 20 baggers that happen. Once you get into production, it's a whole different world, but it's nice to have the cash flows and we are looking at some opportunities potentially that maybe down the road that could get us into production quickly,
All
but
right.
still early days.
It would be great if you would go into production and maybe have your own mint, so I would be able to buy silver ounces or even gold ounces straight out of your mine.
Yeah.
Okay,
One day,
so
one day.
yeah, one day. So this is still way in the future, but nonetheless, all right. So getting to the final and last question. So to wrap it up, I want to pivot to the technical analysis perspective. So I'm sharing my chart here. As you can see, this is the daily chart. So one candle represents 1 day of trading volume, and the stock is currently consolidating right below this gray box, which is the resistance between 1.4 to 1.5 Canadian dollars. And it
Mhm.
seems to have found a great support zone right here at around 1 Canadian dollar.
Mhm.
And we've talked about the 100,000 meter, sorry, drill funding and the high amount of money in the bank right now. But the chart shows a market that is in a waiting position. And based on the second part of the two results coming in the next few weeks and months, which specific fundamental catalyst do you believe will provide the volume and momentum needed to get a sustainable breakout of the current range and start the next leg up? So which or what would be the catalyst that could actually re-rate the stock price or the company right now?
Yeah, well, obviously, aside from the markets being weak after, PDAC and everything,
Mm-hmm.
dropping 50% across the board, it seems. Internally, I mean, really the driver for the next leg up would be a brand new discovery on our project that really gets the market excited. And that would be the biggest catalyst. That gray bar, interesting, you put that gray bar there. That's also kind of the last area that we raised the financing at 145 per share, that 23 million that we talked about originally
Yep.
earlier on in the call. So whether that becomes a ceiling now or a level of support in the future, interesting you put that gray bar there because that definitely is becoming um, a zone. But yeah, definitely, drilling, we've completed close to 40 holes so far this year. We've announced 15 of them. Just two weeks ago, we put out a news release with some assays. We should have some more news out in the next month or so with some more assays. And the drilling's going to continue for the rest of the year. So every couple months, we'll be putting out news on drilling, and we're drilling a lot of new areas to the south. We're going to be drilling some new areas even further south of Aguilarena. And so, that's really, I think, well, being an exploration company, that's what moves the needle is pulling some nice holes and nice grades and the market reacting to, the potential here.
Yeah, of course, and especially explorer companies are very volatile. So this could
Mhm.
break out pretty fast, come back down again. That's why also asking for a sustainable breakout. And as you said, I expect or I would think that the same things need to apply. So new exploration, new high grade exploration to be hit. And maybe you can answer this, so you don't have to if you don't can or if you don't want to, but what would you say? What's the probability of you guys hitting a brand new target, a brand new exploration?
Well, we are. I mean, I think almost every week we're hitting something new because, these targets have never been drilled before. Whether or not they move the needle or not, again, that's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of structures to the south we're drilling. We're still waiting to get back the assays, but we are hitting, veins down there. But we are, I would classify, those as new discoveries. Whether or not they're going to be, how big they are,
Mm-hmm.
is the other question. If we could find another Aguilarena type, main structure, that would be obviously what we're looking for. Um, so again, like the potential I think is high. We're cashed up. We've got rigs, drilling now on areas that have never been tested, and we've got targets galore. We've got lots of permits. We're hopefully going to have more additional permits in the next few months that we're currently going through with the government to get or Sempernaut to get additional permits to drill into the north. If Lizeth turns out to be this Lizeth area is actually where Capstone back in the early 2000s, they were working up there for a couple years. They did sampling and mapping up there, but never drill tested it. And they were getting from what I've been told, a couple of grams of gold in sampling up there, but never drilled it. So if we drill that area up there, it's a 250-meter wide sheeted veins coming out of the earth up there that could be a bulk tonnage operation or maybe it could be underground. Who knows? We don't know. But that could be a standalone operation by itself if it turns out to be of a critical mass up to the north. So we've got time on our side, and we're just going to keep our head down, and we're going to drill, and we're going to see what this project has. And as I said to all of our investors, we either want to find something big or fail fast so we can move on to the next target, just given the amount of targets on this project. So yeah, lots of I think lots of potential catalyst to move this share price in the future. And it's still the market cap is crazy. $100 million market cap with 26 million bucks in the bank, plus another 9 million that would come in through warrants over the next 2 years. So we're in a good financial position. The share price will do what it's going to do. But just from a execution basis, we've got all the ducks in a row here, and we just need to let the drill do its thing.
All right. Yeah, I must say in the last few weeks of doing research on your project, on your mining area, on your exploration areas, on your corporate presentation, on the news flow and so on. So I'm really
Intrigued?
yeah, I'm really intrigued, and I'm optimistic that your project
Well,
really has a lot more to give to investors. So there's a lot more potential, and I really like it. So I myself will start buying. So I can just say it right now. So I myself will start buying because the chart looks great. The fundamentals really look great. As you just said, you have a lot of money in the bank right now, and you have really great plans. So yeah, that's from my side, my opinion. So
well,
let us, yeah,
there's not too many, and I've looked at a lot of projects in my day, and there's not a lot of exploration projects that, within a good jurisdiction
yeah,
with all the ingredients to build something. I mean, we're 10 minutes from the second largest city in the state of Durango, where there's 50,000 people, and we're literally right off the highway, so we don't have to fly in. We don't have to build a camp. Everybody who works there can go stay at a hotel or, go to a restaurant for a night, for dinner. They don't have to fly in. The drilling costs, as you mentioned, are cheap because our contractor drives up 2 hours from the city of Durango. We've got skilled labor next to us. I mean, so we've got a power line that runs across the project that connects some of Fresnillo's mine and one of the Fresnillo mines to the west of us. So we've got all the ingredients, right, that you need. And being in Durango is a fantastic place to be. Most people, kind of group Mexico all together when they read the headlines. But Durango, if you look at the Peace Index, Durango is the third best state to be out of 31 states. It's the third best or lowest crime rate state there is. And I can't, say that enough, that it's just a great place to be in Mexico and along the Sierra Madres there. We're in the right zip code, the right area. And, we're not in the desert up in Sonora. We can work all day long at this project from sun up to sundown. You just couldn't ask for a better exploration project to have. And the fact that you've got high grade, at surface with all these structures. I mean, again, it's just, I fell in love with this project when I first saw it. And it was, again, I couldn't have asked for a better project to acquire and get involved with here.
yeah. I've heard that you actually took a lot of time to select a really great project to start explorating. Yeah, so as you just said, I'm also really optimistic and I'm looking forward to the news flow. All right, Todd, really appreciate the time and the transparency. I think this gives investors a much clearer understanding of the key catalysts and what really matters going forward. And since we are all waiting for the remaining phase 2 results and the main resource updates in the next couple of years, I would love to have you back once the news hit the wires to break down the data together. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you, Patrice. Thank you.
So that was my conversation with Todd. And this is exactly why I like the approach of combining technical analysis with direct insights from management on this YouTube channel, because it gives a much clearer picture of what's actually going on beneath the surface. So, based on everything we've just covered, the chart, the valuation, and the insights directly from management, I think that Pacifica Silver is one of the more interesting high upside setups right now. And I've personally started building a position in small increments because I see strong potential for further high grade discoveries and a meaningful resource over time. But of course, this all comes down to execution. And that's exactly what I'll be watching closely going forward. For me, this is not a short-term trade, it's a long-term bet on the team and the project. And as always, This is not financial advice. And of course guys, if you want to find out more about Pacifica Silver and begin with your own research, you can click on the first link in the description. It will lead you directly to the official website of the company. I will be tracking how the story and my position develop as new results come out. Therefore, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments which CEO or company I should cover next. Thanks for watching the video. Goodbye.